today Robert and I are going to talk to you about something that I think we have all kind of done a little bit of research about, or you might have done something about this yourselves. So we're going to talk about AI and in particular about its applications in the education system, more specifically in higher education, right? So what we're all doing right now. So just by a show of hands, how many of you have used or known of things like ChatGPT? Okay, yeah, a great proportion of you guys, right? And have you guys heard of the new Google, I guess, competitor to ChatGPT, Bard, that just came in? It just came out yesterday, I think. So yeah, it's a really.
The Bing came out with their thing today.
Oh, everyone's releasing something these days, right? And so it's really kind of an exciting field, but also it raises a lot of important ethical questions for us to consider as students, as people who are kind of stakeholders in our education, right? So we hope that through today's module, we can talk to you a little bit about how AI is can discuss a little bit about how AI is affecting you as students and how it is affecting instructors like Professor Choi. And then we'll kind of move on to talk a little bit about what are the responsibilities of specifically people who make this, right? So if any of you are interested in making these AI products in the future, this might become helpful as you think about it from an ethics perspective. So, yeah, so I'll throw it back to Robert.
So we're going to talk about how AI is affecting our study as students. So basically AI can be applied to every discipline you can think of. In humanities and social sciences, you can use it to, summarize your essays or even generate your essays. In STEM subjects, it could be used to design experiments for physics or biology. It could be used to write codes and debug, and you can also solve your math problems. And in the arts, it could be used to generate artworks or even compose music. These disciplines are more likely, it's traditionally depends on human creativity, but AI might be taking over right now. So most of you have heard of ChatGPT, and I believe a lot of you have used it in some ways. Maybe you have used it in some of your classes, or I don't know. So let's talk about some of these ideas. So this is a survey from Stanford. So basically they did a survey on how students use their ChatGPT in their past final. So it's for 2022. 70% of students said they use ChatGPT for their final exam. And as you can see, almost 60% of people reported that they use it for some kind of ideas or brainstorming. And some people use it for multiple choice questions. And there are roughly 15% of people submitted something that ChatGPT gave them with some editing or no editing at all. So as you can see, this definitely poses some challenges for educators and in terms of how we can, how they can ensure academic integrity in the future. So just to give you some other information on this, this is a summarizer called Crowbot. They have 15 million users around the world. So basically you can just paste in any passage into it and it will summarize it for you. So I just took a passage from Daily Trojans, roughly 500, 600 words, and it gave me a summary of 90 words. So for the students who might not want to do their readings, maybe they would have an incentive to put their reading into this, and they just, read the summary. This is another tool. It's an AI-powered essay generator called EssaySoft. So basically, you put in your topic, and then you can put in different parameters like how long it should be and how formal it should be, and it will give you an essay in a few seconds. So many students might want to use this for brainstorming. So this could be helpful. But if students are actually submitting the essays from these generators, this could again pose some problems. So we will dive deeper into some of these issues.
Yeah, and I think our discussion is not complete, right? Without talking about ChatGPT. Well, it's been exciting everyone since it came out in November 2022. Before that, it was kind of a research tool that you have to sign up for a wait list and have like a concrete scientific project to be granted access. But now it's open to the public as OpenAI is trying to improve their model every day, and it predicts the most appropriate response based on what you put into the prompt, right? So for example, here is when I asked it to introduce itself, and that's it's kind of a short, but I think a pretty good soft introduction feel. And in 40 days, they reached 10 million users. For comparison, Instagram I think took around 3 months to reach that amount of users. So it's really kind of taking the world by storm, right? And we will see later when we do some activities together. If you have not used ChatGPT before, anyone who hasn't used it before. Okay, if you haven't used it before, maybe this will be your first kind of first-hand observation of how powerful, I guess, or how many things it could do, right? And then we'll talk about what that means as well. Yeah, so I think this is going to be the point where I ask you to do some kind of interactive activity with ChatGPT. Hopefully you have all had OpenAI accounts to use this. How many of you have an account? Okay, awesome. So maybe if you guys can kind of work together in groups, maybe it probably will have to be a pretty big group. But together, I would like to propose this activity that we can do together, right? So say you guys are now in the writing 340 class, right? But suppose let's say you are in another writing class that gave you this kind of prompt, and you might say, well, I'm kind of running out of ideas, right? So maybe I want to put this into ChatGPT and think of and see what it gives me, right? So maybe let's do that, and you guys can take a look at the essay that you have, right? And you can hold on to it because we're gonna need it for a later activity. But whether or not you have an OpenAI account to try this on your own, maybe you can work in groups and see what sort of output is being produced, and then discuss together how would you use this sort of result that the OpenAI gives you, right? Will you, like 5.5% of the Stanford students surveyed, will you submit it without any edits, or will you use it in sort of your brainstorming process, and what kind of thinking led you to that decision, right? Sounds good? Any questions? Okay, so let's get to it. If you guys can form groups and probably try it out for a couple of minutes, see what it's about. And don't worry about this prompt. I mean, I thought of this prompt, but if there is any other prompt that you guys are more interested in, definitely put that in as well. Let's see what it gives us, right? All right, so let's give you guys a couple minutes to work on it, and we'll come back as a group later to talk about it. Oh, what? Sorry? So, yeah, so this is like the prompt that I am suggesting, but of course, if you have like another essay prompt you're more interested in, go for it. And also for those who just started using ChatGPT, one way that you make your prompts like a little bit more specific is to write something like, instead of just putting this question, right? What you can do is that you can say, well, write me, say like a 300-word essay in the style of a college level writing essay, right? So be very specific in your request, and also be creative and see what is output, right?
Yeah. The Quillbot and the SAT that you mentioned earlier, are they part of OpenAI too?
I don't think so. I think like different companies are working on those.
Are they accessible to everybody?
They are.
I think Huang gives you only a trial,
Yeah,
right?
you need to pay.
To see the whole thing. So it's, yeah. Yeah, also you guys might want to go for shorter essays just so that we can like we can kind of talk about them more effectively together.
Even if you do generate long essays, you can put that essay and then say to summarize it, and it will summarize it for you.
All right, we're doing good. Everybody's getting some kind of output. You guys doing good?
Yeah.
Oh, it's giving you a lot of paragraphs.
Yeah, we have such great friends in style of Yoda.
It's all Yoda.
Yes.
Nice.
Wait, did you ask me to?
Yeah, a very common way to kind of customize your response is saying like in the style of something, so it changes like its tone and things like that, and you can like take it and just like run away. All right, so let's maybe give us a few more seconds. Maybe do one more prompt if you want to see a more interesting essay, probably. All right, I think let's go back together as a group. So would anyone be willing to share with everyone about like what did ChatGPT put out for your essay? What did you prompt it to do? Maybe just give me one sentence that you really liked, or maybe some general comment like, do you think it was good, or do you think it was bad, or do you think like you would not use this writing in any way? Yes.
That was really interesting. I was writing a 1,500 word paper, and like,
Is it still writing?
no, it just ended up 1,500 word, like in the middle of a sentence.
Oh, okay. So it's giving you a kind of like halfway essay. Okay, that's interesting because I've never tried like that long of an essay. So that's curious, yeah. Any other thoughts, comments? What did you guys put into ChatGPT to make it produce an essay for you? Any prompts you put in that you guys like? Well, I think this group talked about like putting in the voice of Yoda, right? Did you guys try to? And what kind of sentences did it put out for you? Is it making any?
Something.
Can you do it in the voice of
Much wisdom to be gained from the COVID-19 pandemic. A great lesson it has taught us indeed.
Any other interesting comments or inputs? All right, then maybe let's talk about how willing are you to use the essays or the outputs that ChatGPT has given you, right? So what are some of your thoughts on this? Who thinks they will be very willing to use some of this in your writing assignments or something like that? Okay, so how would you use it? Because we see with the Stanford students, you can use it in different degrees, right? Some of them just submit it right away, some of them use it in sort of preparing for the essay. So what do you?
Well, I didn't think the essay was very good, but I thought it made a pretty good outline. Like after writing the essay, I asked it to outline it instead, and it was better that way.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I think a lot of people, when they go to things like this, they often use prompts like, give me some reasons why people would A, B, and C, and it will spit out like, 5 or 6 reasons, and then you can use it as sort of like your baseline, right? Some people think it's okay for that. Okay, what about any other comments? Will you use it? Who thinks they would not use it in any way? Okay, maybe, yeah, I think that it is very, very exciting that you have this tool kind of available to you, because you can see that it will do a lot of things, right? And we will explore some of the other uses other than writing essays, because apparently ChatGPT and other tools are also very powerful at doing things that are beyond writing essays, right? So then it starts us to think about how can we kind of go about this in terms of ethics, right? Will you be fine with using something like that from an academic honesty perspective and other kind of considerations? But for now, let's kind of talk more about what these tools can do, right, and why we care about them.
Yeah, so this is when I use it for coding. So I just give it a simple prompt to generate a random number printed if it's greater than 200. So it gave me this, and this actually worked. So it took it like a few seconds to generate this. Yeah, so it's pretty powerful, as you can see. And it could also be used to debug your code. So basically here I just took out the semicolons. And then I asked ChatGPT to debug this thing for me, and it correctly identified this. So this could be helpful, like if you're like coding at midnight and no one can help you, you might want to put your code into ChatGPT, and it could tell you why it didn't work. So yeah, just some more examples. It could be used to solve math problems. So I asked it to do this integral for me, and it actually gave me the right answer and all these steps. So a lot of time we only get like the answers from the solution, but if you actually want to know the steps, this is why ChatGPT is so powerful. It's like you can get exactly step-by-step solution. But definitely there are like a lot of problems with it. Many people are using ChatGPT to take their college exams, and actually ChatGPT passed some of these exams, and also AP exams, and also it passed the interview by Google. Not sure whether you have seen videos on TikTok. People just pasted their multiple choice questions into ChatGPT and have the ChatGPT take the exam. So definitely there are a lot of ethical problems here, especially concerning like whether you're following the honor code. So this is the survey from Stanford again, asking what people think about academic integrity, like related to ChatGPT. A lot of people like think if you use it more than just for ideas, it could violate the honor code. And some people believe if you use it at all, that would be plagiarism. But also, like some people say, if you submit the answers without edits, that could be a problem. But if you submit it with some editing, that should be fine. And also, like 13% of people believe it's totally fine for you to use it. So as you can see, like people have different opinions on this.
Yeah, so just to kind of summarize why are some people concerned over like the use and the prevalence of ChatGPT, and us like college students having access to it, right? A lot of the concerns focus on talking about plagiarism, having the work of not another person, but another machine, another system, and then you're taking that work and presenting it as your own. And that is actually something that a lot of schools have been using to say that that's why we don't allow ChatGPT to be used, right? And also you guys can see that some of the essays, like the one that the one that cuts in the middle, right? ChatGPT is not perfect. So there are some things that it still got wrong. If you guys remember back to some of the previous slides, I think someone tried to have it like do some AP English essays, and it passed, but it passed at a 3. So that is like a minimum level of passing for college credit purposes, right? So it's not perfect. So a lot of the times, even when students want to use it, they can't use it sort of like just as is, right? And then another argument, I suppose, right, is that when you do these problems, right, maybe this process of learning is something that's more important. Maybe we shouldn't focus too much on getting the right answers, but I think one of my professors put it in this way, that like doing like math or econ or something like that is struggle, right? You need to struggle with the work and to be able to kind of gain that experience for yourself. But if you're trying to use ChatGPT to kind of skip that struggle, then maybe like learning doesn't have that much value anyways. And maybe like, yeah, if you don't want to go to office hours, if you don't want to talk to anyone, you can use ChatGPT. But a lot of the times, right, learning activities are collaborative, and we're working in groups, we're learning from each other, so that might be a concern as well. But all of this is to, rather than like to convince you out of the way, right, that using ChatGPT is like 100% wrong or something. These are, I guess, some of these suggestions to get us thinking about like how do we want to evaluate ChatGPT's place in our classrooms, right? And particularly in relation with your own work. What are you going to deal with? How are you going to deal with ChatGPT yourself when you're thinking about these assignments in class and everything else, right? So let's throw the discussion back to you. I guess the first question that I have is, when is it right or wrong to use AI tools like ChatGPT, right? So a good way to think about this would be, let's think of cases, right? Let's think of boundaries where we should divide between using it and not using it, right? So any ideas or thoughts on this? Or we can do another group discussion if you guys feel like it might be better to talk in groups. So any ideas you want to share with the class? Yes.
Well, I feel like the obvious boundary of when it's wrong is if no effort from the user was put into the work. So, like if nothing was done from the user and everything was done by the AI.
Oh, so you're talking about like the extreme case when people just like submit whatever is outputted by ChatGPT, right? Yep. So that is the boundary that I think a lot of the students in the survey that we just saw earlier also put out, right? An important part of learning is effort, and if you cannot demonstrate effort, then it's not really integrity there, right? Yeah. So great idea. Thank you so much. Any other ideas? Do you think we should go stricter or something? Yes?
I think it's kind of important to compare ChatGPT to kind of like a search engine like Google.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you kind of go off that basis, you should theoretically, like up to now, these standards, you should only use ChatGPT up to like what like a search engine can do. And so I think for now, that's kind of where the line is with like plagiarism and stuff.
Oh,
If you do more than what a search engine can do, then I think that's another discussion.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to put it. So what do you think are some of the things that would not be allowed under that kind of basis?
So that's the tricky part, right? Because if you think about writing, it's pretty obvious that like writing like an essay for you is not something that Google can do unless you go to like a specific website that does that, right? And like for example for math, you have like Chegg, right? And like if you're looking at Chegg, how is that supposed to be different than asking ChatGPT to like solve your math equation, right? Even though Google might not necessarily do it, so it's
I think Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that it poses a very interesting question, right? Well, if we maybe another way to approach AI tools like this is we compare it to kind of the status quo, right, of what is happening now. So if people are able to go onto Google and look for ideas, and that's not widely considered to be plagiarism, maybe that's the standard that we also should be putting to things like ChatGPT, right? I think there's another point of your comment that I think it's important for us to think about is that how do we see like things like ChatGPT in our classroom today, right? Right now, people are kind of like against it, and so let's think about like maybe a century ago, they will when calculators were starting to be a thing, people were like doing like by hand calculations then. And some instructors were not kind of receptive to the idea of using, you know, tools like that in class because you're kind of circumventing the learning of like doing calculations, right? And even until now, I mean, in the survey, around half of the instructors in Calculus 1 classes in college are not having their students use calculators in any way during exams, right? So it might help for us to think about AI also, like you said, as kind of an emerging technology that we need to reevaluate, like the place in the classroom. Does it belong or does it not, right? So yeah, I think good discussion from everyone. You might think of what we might think about is what are the boundaries, right? And the boundaries that you guys have proposed are all very good and all in terms of a good starting point for discussion, right? You can certainly go deeper into it and think about like these little nitty gritty like cases of, oh, I used it, but just to like I looked at it for 5 seconds and then I put it away for a day and then I started writing my essay, right? So maybe that is a good starting point. But let's move on and talk a little bit about another. Let's continue.
Yeah. So as you can see, there are a lot of problems with academic integrity. So let's take a look at what the universities and the public school districts are responding. Middle school and high school public school districts, some of them have banned ChatGPT from their school network. So I think New York City was the first one to ban it, and a couple of different school districts also ban it now. So I think one interesting thing about this is that it banned it from the school network. So neither the students nor the teachers can use it. So that's interesting. So they're not only banning students because of the concerns for plagiarism, but they are also banning teachers from using it. And also, there is a problem of unequal access because they only ban it from the school network. So if some students have, mobile data or some other kind of ways to get around with it, they can still use it. But for those students who have to depend on school Wi-Fi, that could be a problem. And then in higher education, like colleges, universities are generally slower in coming up with formal policy. Like at USC, we don't really have a formal policy. So we can say universities and colleges are like implicitly allowing this type of technology. The George Washington University in DC has proposed to change their assessment, their way of assessment. So they propose to reduce the number of like take-home exams. Maybe we have more in-class exams so that people cannot use ChatGPT. And also many universities are considering to use this plagiarism detector that could be used to detect AI text, which we will have a look later. So currently, many plagiarism checkers like Turnitin, I don't think they can like detect the AI text. So a lot of developers are like developing the detectors that could be used to detect AI plagiarism.
and I think now it's a good point for us to also talk about this problem in terms of the view of instructors, right? So we're talking about like how we feel and how we want to go about writing essays or whatnot with AI. But let's think about instructors when like Professor Choi or your other professors were teaching you, and who might come across like essays or other graded work that has some kind of involvement in these tools, right? Yes. So one thing to kind of recognize as well is that professors, instructors in general, they also have a lot to gain from AI-powered tools in terms of creating personalized student learning plans, right? So for a class of 300 people, it's good for them to kind of keep tabs on people and keep tabs on how students are doing, and having these tools in is a good way to address that need. Also, things like tracking student progress and on-demand tutoring, right? At 2 a.m., maybe some students may have some questions that they cannot reach a professor straight away. So that's when these tools can be very helpful. Yeah, so some things that we kind of tried ourselves, making lesson plans, right? I think a lot of things I have read about, like, there are teachers who said that planning for their lessons and thinking about the structure takes them a lot of time. So maybe these tools can help a little bit. It's a very rudimentary outline, right? It's not like going into the specifics of the topic, but you can see that there is a starting point there that instructors can use in informing their lessons. We also have other stuff that, for example, creates like questions, writing exams is also something that takes a lot of time to do, like writing questions. So maybe like having tools like this will allow instructors to have more time to dedicate to student teaching and to make their jobs easier, basically.
Also like AI is like extensively used in a lot of exam grading right now. Like a lot of standardized exams like SAT and GRE, they are using AI to grade essays. So these algorithms are usually trained on samples graded by humans. So basically the AI mark the essays based on the human grades. And then, so there are like a lot of problems. Like the first one is maybe the AI just cannot accurately reflect people's writing ability. So some people definitely they figure out how this algorithm works. So they just put in complicated sentences and complicated words, and they get very high score. Although you don't know what they're writing about. And also there are like a lot of problems with biases, because these algorithms are trained on human graded samples, so it really heavily depends on how humans grade the essays. Like some research has found that these algorithms are biased towards certain ethnic groups, and also like there's the problem of statistical discrimination. Like if two people write in similar writing style, maybe they will get similar scores, but that doesn't imply these two people have similar writing ability. And here's a map. This is just a map showing like which states are using AI to grade their exams right now.
All right. So now let's throw it back to you. You guys to talk a little bit about this, and I think in the interest of time, we'll probably kind of go to the second question. Right now. So. So for instructors, a lot of their work, right, we can see that AI has the potential to do something about that, right? So I think, and one of the things that ChatGPT can do is writing recommendation letters, right? So for example, if you are approaching Professor Choi, maybe at the end of the semester, and asking for a letter of reference, right? What do you think what would be your thoughts, right? If Professor Choi or another professor you're asking a letter of reference to is using these tools to write it. So what does everyone think? So maybe let's do a show of hands first to kind of test the waters. Who would be okay? I think that's okay, that's fine, no problem at all. or at least like, okay, awesome. Who would not like that to happen? All right, so some of you as well. It'll be like I think it's okay. Not like not too bad, but not too good either. Okay, yeah. So let's hear some of the reasons why you guys might think so. So among all of you who said that you're fine with it, what are some of your thoughts? What are some of the reasons why you think this is okay? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's ethically okay, but as far as students getting as many letters of recommendation as possible, it seems like it's a win-win. Teachers don't have to write them, and students can use them to apply to things in their position.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to think about, right? Because writing letters of recommendation takes a lot of effort for professors who have a really busy schedule, right? And so for having to write, say, 15 letters of recommendation, that's a lot. So maybe that could help them reduce like the amount of work that they have to do, right? So maybe what about you guys who said that you would not be okay if there was a AI written or assisted letter of recommendation? What do you think? Why? What kind of informed your decision? Yeah, feel free to shout out something.
I wasn't necessarily against it. I'm in the eye for an eye camp. So like if, say, my professor is going to use ChatGPT to do their work, to write letters of recommendation or to design their course plans, then I can use it to write my essays and to do the assignments for your class, because I also have a busy schedule. So I'm kind of in the, if you're going to use it, I think it's unfair to not allow your students to use it.
I see. So you're informed by the thinking that if they are kind of allowed to use it, then
Yeah.
so are we, right?
And I don't think I should use it to do my work, so I think, therefore, they probably shouldn't use it to do theirs.
I see. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting line of argument there, right? Yeah. Other ideas or responses to maybe you guys think that one of those ideas are very interesting and you want to expand on?
Well, I just feel like if it's that easy for a professor to make, like say a professor has to write so many letters of rec, then if they just put it into ChatGPT, then they can make so many, and then they can give out a bunch, and then that kind of makes like the value of like a letter of rec way lower. I feel like you shouldn't ask a professor for a letter of recommendation unless like they shouldn't give you one unless they're willing to actually just write one out for you. Like, they feel like personally close enough to give you one.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yes,
Yeah,
Professor.
so when someone asks me for a letter of recommendation, I don't always say yes. Because, I mean, I want to give an honest letter, and sometimes I don't remember the students. Because, it's like years ago, and then they're like, remember me, I want to go to law school now. I don't. Or I don't have access to their papers, on Blackboard. And I think, their writing as a sophomore in college has probably improved since then. So I always say, if you can't find anyone else, I'll hunt down your work and write it for you, but, I don't know if I can give you the best one. Of course, I don't need ChatGPT, I can really use the computer, but if I Google, form letter of recommendation letter, I can pull up one now and just stick your name in and submit it. So, I don't know if I need ChatGPT to sort of cheat the system, but I will say, if I do say yes to a student, I'll pull up their letters, I'll pull up their emails, I'll look at my notes and say, oh yeah, remember Chris wrote this, and we had a great conversation about this, and he's really interested in this, and then I try to put it all in the letter. And so it takes kind of a while, because if I say yes, I want to write the best, most honest letter I can. Especially if it's someone for graduate school at USC and they've seen many of my letters, I don't want them to be like, oh, there's their form letter again. I want them to feel like this is a really good letter. But not all the professors are going to be like that, I'll be perfectly honest. They'll just say, here's my form, and then drop your name in. I don't know how you would know whether or not they did it, because usually you'll check no. I shouldn't have said that, that it's out of bag. But, but I think most professors, it takes a long time, because we have to pre-read your stuff and our notes, and look at all our emails. Oh, remember when we discussed your paper and that type of thing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I think that's a really great perspective to bring to the conversation, right? On one hand, we see that maybe professors, even if some professors don't have ChatGPT, right? They can still do things that shorten their time and don't necessarily mean that like they're putting like a ton of effort into thinking about your letter of recommendation. But on the other hand, we see that there is kind of merit in using ChatGPT as maybe a starting point if professors are really busy and there is like if ChatGPT offers some good pointers on how to start out a letter of recommendation and then they can come in with their expertise and understanding of the student, then maybe ChatGPT after all is something that is positive to use, right?
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
If, like, for like admissions people and people who evaluate letters of rec, if the letter is like very general and like, you know, he's a very good student, he received this grade, I enjoyed having him in class, very good collaborator, very sincerely, and then you sign your name, that's actually not a good letter of recommendation. That is like sort of a red flag, because usually the good letters have like lots of detail, so sometimes it's code for watch out, like this is not good. Because you would never write a terrible letter, because then it sort of opens you up to certain things. But if it's a very broad letter that you could write about anyone, like a book, that's sometimes it's viewed as like either the professor like doesn't remember the student at all, or there's something has occurred and they don't want to say what it is. Because the other letters will usually say like so and so wrote about this and they talked about this, and it's much more in detail. But okay, sorry.
Thank you so much.
I'm done.
I think that is a very good thing to keep in mind as well, and just in general with recommendation letters, right? Yeah, so Reed, thank you all for a very great discussion. I think we're just gonna talk about the last part of our presentation now. In the interest of time, but yeah. So so there are some kind of solutions people have thought of when they see that, like, you know, there are some students who are using it for clearly kind of bad academic purposes and we want to do something about it. So let's take a brief look at what they are. Yeah, OpenAI is actually one of the companies that are very kind of fast when they propose like tools like this. In the past, when chatbot Tay was putting out racist remarks or other AI was not doing good in the world, the companies generally were very quick in kind of pulling those tools. But OpenAI was really kind of contrarian in the sense that they put out these tools very quickly, and that actually has the ripple effect of kind of encouraging other companies to put their stuff out there too. So maybe Google and Bing releasing their stuff had something to do with this, but we might never know, right? But some of the kind of engineering solutions, and I'm just highlighting one of these, right, is GPT-0. Maybe you guys have heard of it. It's made by a CS student at Princeton who kind of coded it over the winter break, I think. And I think like if you paste, so that was what I was saying when I said that you guys should kind of keep your essay that you just created, because another fun exercise for you, maybe you can do it at home, is to try to copy it into GPT-0 and see what it puts up. I put the essay that was ChatGPT generated into GPT-0, and it correctly identified mine as entirely written by AI. So maybe that's something you can try out as well, but in the interest of time, we'll probably skip this activity for now. Yeah. So I guess our final kind of discussion question for you probably will be a shorter one. Is that these AI tools again are not infallible, right? You can trick it, right? So another good exercise is maybe to try to edit that essay into something that GPT-0 might not identify as AI generated. So do you think those tools have any sort of utility, or would it be just better if we rely on our common intuition? If we see something that is like a little bit off, maybe we can sort of think of it as, oh, maybe this was ChatGPT enabled, right? Well, what are our thoughts on this? And also, yeah, because another concern is about data privacy, right? When you enter those when you entered your essay to be evaluated, though that essay might also be used to help train other future models, right? So maybe it's better for us to kind of just unplug and go old school of reading an essay and see whether or not it's off. So any thoughts on that?
So
All right.
I think one thing people do to trick the AI detector is that they put in some white text so that, you know, when teachers grade them, they could not see those white text, but when the AI detector go through them, it could see those white text, and those white text could make the detector less effective.
The white text is also good to turn it in, or like, so it can't pick up certain text. So some people will put in like between words white text, like an A or an X, and then it will just read as like one sort of jumble, and then turn it in. Looks good.
I actually don't know about that. So yeah, you can see that there are many ways to kind of game the system, right? And
Or
so
students will take out all the articles, and that would be like the A.
yeah, so maybe like yeah, that's kind of a good indication for us to think about how we should approach this technology, right? Because it's easy to be fooled, and so we really want to think about its place in our society. But I think let's wrap up our presentation. We're probably gonna skip this one. But in conclusion, today we talked to you about how students and teachers are being impacted, kind of some engineering solutions out there, and some ethical implications to look out for. So hopefully after this presentation, we have started kind of for you to think about how to curb like undesirable uses of AI in education, and what are some of the solutions, either of technology or non-technology, that people can engage in. But any final questions? Yeah, if